The Seekers of the Storm Roadmap Phase 2 has finally dropped. And with it, we have the final boss rework, the False Sun rework. As a reminder, this roadmap is a Seekers of the Storm 2.0 that Gearbox released, where they're trying to fix the DLC and all of its issues. Phase 1 being the items and elites, we've already had that. That was a great change. You can check out our video over here. It's called The Best Update Nobody Expected. Phase 2 is the final boss, and Phase 3 is going to be survivor focused. However, this isn't just for the False Sun boss fight. There's also a couple other things that have been added into this patch that I think are almost as important, if not more important, than the False Sun change itself. So there will be timestamps below for every part, but I recommend you look at all of it. Now, I wasn't able to play the playtest that they gave content creators, so I'm not entirely sure how the update plays just yet. Check out the stream, twitch.tv/RND-Thursday. I'll be streaming the patch as soon as it comes out, but I just want to add that little bit of transparency here. All right, starting with the False Sun boss fight. One of the biggest changes is the nerf to the laser, which would honestly induce rabid dog with rabies levels of rage in me. The damage has been changed to give you more time to get to cover without being melted like a two-legged stick of butter. The damage still ramps up quickly, but it's a little bit more forgiving now. On top of that, scaling has been changed to make the False Sun more approachable early and less of a coughing baby past the first loop. If you've ever tried to play the False Sun boss fight, you might notice that in the first loop he's super scary, but after you get enough items and you're on a god run, he dies quicker than any other boss in the game. This is because bosses have something called adaptive armor. This is Voidling and Mithrix specific. It is meant to protect against burst damage and is the reason why they aren't auto-deleted even in a 300-minute god run. Every time they take damage, they gain temporary armor equal to 3,000 times damage divided by max HP, or, in layman terms, 30 armor per 1% of the max HP dealt. This armor caps at 400 and decays at a rate of 40 per second, according to the wiki. This means that the max stacks that they can have, it should be about 80% damage reduction, and now this adaptive armor has been added to the False Sun, making him a bit stronger in the later runs that you might have. They mentioned changing the scaling of False Sun, so I believe he'll probably be easier earlier on, but they didn't add any details on how the scaling changed other than it changed and now it has adaptive armor. So I'm not entirely sure how this is going to affect earlier runs, but he's going to be a lot harder later on. Pause. Another massive improvement, our attacks are more telegraphed, meaning you can actually tell when certain attacks are coming. More Elden Ring and less bullet hell with a blindfold. If you look at his smash attack, he lifts his leg and makes it more apparent that the attack is coming, and they've also mentioned that audio and visual effects have also been added, so you have a decent chance of dodging most of his attacks now. Whereas before, it was kind of like, oh, which attack are you about to hit me with, big guy? Oh, we're feeling laser today. Okay, I'm dead. The False Sun's AI has also been improved, so he's not going to be goofy anymore. I mean, fat chance of that, but hopefully. And now there's only 5 golems at a time in the arena, which is a much needed change because when I'm trying to fight the boss, I don't want to have to deal with the random trash mobs constantly. Not to break out another Elden Ring analogy here, but no one looked at the Malenia boss fight and thought, you know what? You know what this needs? More dogs. Let's have random dogs thrown in there. And finally, there is a secret way of entering the Path of the Colossus. I'm honestly not sure what it is, and even if I did, I wouldn't spoil it. So go find it yourself, dork. And that's about all I know about the False Sun boss fight changes. Now let's talk about something very important, Void Fields. Void Fields got changed again. Some backstory / lore for anyone who didn't know, but Void Fields was changed a while ago. I think even when Hopu was still in charge. Basically, Void Fields used to be super broken because time is stopped in the Void Fields and the stage does not increment. Meaning that you can go to this certain area in the map and farm as many items as you want and leaving whenever you've had your fill. Because of this, at some point they changed it so time does actually increase while you're in there, and the stage also increments while you're there. This was also when they added interactables to the Void Fields, so chests and whatnot, so it makes sense that they nerfed it a little bit, but this also made it so 90% of people didn't go down there anymore. At some point they made it so the stage count does not increase anymore, and then the Devotion update, which was relatively recent, it was the patch right before the release of Seekers of the Storm, they reverted it back to time being stopped while in Void Fields. Well, guess what? Void Fields is back on the menu, boys. Not really sure why, and I honestly don't go here much, so it's kind of weird to even see this mentioned. If it wasn't for Starstorm 2, I would have forgotten the Void Fields even existed. But here are the changes. Now, when you're in the Void Fields, time stops when you're inside the safe zone of the Void Cells, but resumes when a player is outside taking damage from the Void Fog. This only happens while a cell is active, so when you're running from cell to cell trying to get all 8 done, time won't increase. But when active and taking damage from the fog, it will. On top of that, the fog damage also ramps up over time, kind of like Seeker's utility skill, which is honestly the change I hate the most because I hate damage that just slowly ramps up over time for no reason. It stresses me out, man. It gives me anxiety. So you can't just indefinitely stand outside in the fog anymore. And the cherry on top is if you take a long time to complete a Void Cells, monsters will start getting items faster. This seems counterintuitive to the whole point of Void Fields in the first place. I would think Void Fields is a place to go if you're struggling in a run and you need to catch up a little bit. You go down to the void fields, grab a couple of items, and then you leave, and you're able to take advantage of the fact that you just gained a whole bunch more items and hopefully come back in the game. But if you're already struggling in a run, it's going to be hard to complete a void cell, which is now in turn going to make it harder to complete the next void cells. So now the strong get stronger and the weak get weaker. It's not fair, man. Incels and void cells rise up. There's been a couple times where I've had really good runs and I've been inside void fields and been forced outside by a large enemy like a gup. But I can imagine a whole bunch of different scenarios where someone's forced out of a cell because of a certain enemy type or item that drops. It's very RNG heavy. This whole section is weird because I don't know why they're nerfing void fields again. I'm sure you can abuse it, and there are probably people who abuse it to win more runs or something. And now that Sonorous Whispers exist, I'm sure that plays a little bit of a factor into it. But can't you have just disabled that item there or something? I don't know. I just feel like it makes it a worse experience for everybody. But then again, I never went there before, and I probably won't go there now, so it doesn't really matter to me. One very, very important part and final thing on the void fields is there is a known issue that going through the void fields will increment the stage counter. This isn't intended and is apparently getting worked on for a future update, so probably don't do void fields right now because it's super nerfed. Then again, free will exists and you can do whatever you want. So this section that we're going up to is item changes. Big changes for the items, all nerfs, some of which were sorely needed. First up, unstable transmitter now works once per stage, barrier has been decreased, and the one-shot protection has been removed. I'm going to ignore the barrier thing because it's not that important realistically, but this seems like a bad change, I'm not going to lie. And I think the functionality of the item was to essentially protect the rest of your items, a delicate watch and an elixir. So if this change makes it so that elixir and delicate watches still activate when unstable transmitter activates, this is a bad change. However, if unstable transmitter does protect elixir and delicate watch, I'd say this is a good change. It's a fine nerf. Next up, they rebalance long-standing solitude. Don't really know what this means, but probably a nerf, I would say. The base speed benefit of elusive antlers has also been removed. You can now only gain move speed by collecting the orb drops. Gotta catch them all if you want the speed now, lazy asses. And now it's not an immediate choice over something like energy drink or goat hoof. Now you have to think about it. Growth Nectar is now just 4% stat increase instead of 7% and no longer increases the base stat increase per stack, which is a good change because it was absolutely busted. I think it was like exponential increase of stats if you kept stacking them. It made all my Benthic Bloom runs beautiful. Warped Echo damage reduction reduced to 20% and delayed damage now works with items like Planula, Razor Wire, and others, probably Repulsion. Although it always worked with Razor Wire, so I don't know why that was mentioned in the first place. Warbonds no longer has a proc chance. It went from 1 to 0. So no more 2 billion ATGs from Warbonds, and the gold cost went from 25 to 50, a small chest to large chest gold cost. That's a pretty massive nerf for Warbonds, but then again, Warbonds is broken. Base damage of Breaching Fin also reduced to 10%. Bolstering Lantern had its attack speed bonus reduced by 10% to 7.5% per enemy. So now one stack of Warbonds is equivalent to 2 soldier syringes at max stacks. The loot chance from Sonorous Whispers has been rebalanced to favor white items, an insane sentence to read. The explanation is a little convoluted, but items in Risk of Rain 2 are affected by a drop chance bias, which long story short essentially means that the more items a rarity has, the more common that rarity is. The best example to highlight this is a large chest, which has an 80% chance of dropping a green item and a 20% chance to drop a red item. But because there are more green items than there are red items, that 80% chance is more like 84% chance or something. I didn't do the math on that, I just blurted out a number. And because there are more green items than there are white items, yes, this is true, this means that Sonorous Whispers was dropping green items more often than it should, which is why I'm assuming this change happened. And finally, for item changes, Chronic Expansion had its beep nerfed. This last section is short but important, just like me and Napoleon. Here are some miscellaneous changes that were also added in this patch that I think are quite good. For starters, the Halcyonite has been improved. The Whirlwind attack has been fixed a bit because it's quite wonky sometimes, so hopefully this is addressing that specifically. They improved the Halcyonite hitbox to better match the visuals. This is something I complained about a couple times, and maybe loudly. All 3 blasts of Halcyonite's Tri-Laser now track the player. This, you know what, didn't need to do this. It makes sense, but I was comfortable with it not. Scorchworm HP has been reduced, thank God. Running over a buried Scorchworm should now be more consistent in forcing them to come above ground, which is very good because it's been very annoying trying to kill Scorchworms and they easily kill me, so. Another change for the False Sun area, Prime Meridian. After that stage, instead of going straight to Helmet Hatchery, stage 5, you will instead go to a stage 4 variant, so Abyssal Death, Siren's Call, Sundered Grove, etc. Meaning you don't miss out on all the goodies in stage 4, essentially a guaranteed legendary, and all the items that come with it. Technically speaking, it's not actually going to send you to stage 4. Prime Meridian is actually just not incrementing the stages, so whatever stage you end up going to Prime Meridian on, through the Path of the Colossus or Early Night's Portal, however you manage to get there, it'll be like Void Fields and won't increment the stages. As for bug fixes, we got some cool ones, including the sombering electric boomerang bug that has finally been fixed, even though they promised last time. But this time, for real, no cap, it's fixed. Surely. And to end all of this on the highest note possible, Newt can talk again. I thought free speech died, but Gearbox gave it back. Thank you, Gearbox. He couldn't be silenced, and neither will I. That's about it for the patch notes. I will be streaming today, might even be when you watch this, at twitch.tv/RNDThursday. So come by if you want to see the update in all of its glory. I'm going to be trying to go to the Fall Sun early as possible, and testing out all the new item changes and whatnot. Might even go to the Void Fields. Who knows? We're getting crazy over here. Bye! Swagmoney69 signing out.